Nathan and the Awful, Horrendous, Spontaneous Idea. Written by Alejandro, Amy, and Kevin. We survived. We've been through so many things these last 3 years, but we survived, guys. We survived, I kept telling them. Who are we, you ask? We are the coolest kids in the whole school, and the 3 years we spent at South Miami Middle School was epic for the three of us. Not really. I just made all that cool stuff up. My name is Nathan, along with Sergio and Ruth, my two best friends. We constantly pray not to be found by the real cool kids in our school. In every school, there are two types of people: the cool, funny, and sporty kids, and then you have the nerds. Which one are we? You guessed right, not the cool kids. We do not like to think of ourselves as the nerds, because the definition does not really fit us. We are not the foolish and contemptible people that lack social skills, nor are we boringly studious. I cannot remember how many times we have smoothly tried to belong, but it only led to failure. Maybe we were too cool for them, and they just did not want to admit it. That is it. I never thought of it in that way, but now that their hatred towards us makes perfect sense. Ha! Anyways, it was the last week of school, and we could not be happier about it. On Monday of that week, the three of us sat on the steps of Ruth's front porch after school, envisioning how our lives would be the following year. Is high school going to be the same as middle school? Asked Ruth. Sergio seemed out of it, but managed to ask, you mean if you're going to be praying for our lives like we do now? Or if we're going to be able to eat lunch without somebody spitting in our drinks or putting dirt in our chocolate pudding? Ruth gave her answer some thought, and ultimately answered, both. In their whole conversation, I did not say a word. Not because I did not want to, but because I did not know what to say. They had both asked serious questions. We were all secretly terrified to whatever the answer truly might be. That night, I could not go to sleep, and whoever you ask can tell you that lack of sleep and I together are the most dangerous things you could ever encounter. For some weird reason, my greatest science fair projects ideas came to me on sleepless nights. The next morning I could not wait to get to school and share what I believed to be my most extraordinary idea of all. Dude, I'm in love with your brain. Can I just propose now? Seriously? Responded Sergio, once he heard my brilliant idea. Ruth has always been that person in the group that worries about everything. I don't know, guys. What if something goes wrong? She asked. I could not believe she had doubts about my seemingly flawless plan. Sergio and I just shrugged off her comment as Sergio tells her, Ruth, don't be so negative. Everything will be okay. Sometimes she has the right to be worried, but she should not be now. Sergio, on the other hand, has always agreed with my sometimes crazy ideas. It was going to be awesome, or at least I thought so at the time. But Ruth was not entirely on board with the plan. The day that Michael and Johnny, two of the coolest kids who always made our lives miserable, broke Ruth's favorite winning science fair project, was when she drew the line. That project was inspired by Ruth's favorite show, Bill Nye the Science Guy, and she had put so much time into it. The humiliation and vulnerability was way beyond what she could bear, that it made her join our plan. We promised to stay together and never look back at what we used to be, she asked, wiping away the tears that were running down her cheek. We promised, both Sergio and I responded at the same time. For a long time now, we have been judged for being who we are, for what we like to wear or talk about. If people could not accept us the way we are, then we'll just join them at their masquerade ball. We had grown tired of being bullied by the cool kids and their relentlessly inappropriate pranks. We no longer wanted to be the kids the whole school made fun of. We wanted to start as completely changed people and be cooler than the coolest kids in middle school, even if it meant giving away our favorite t-shirt with a math pun on it or downgrading ourselves from honor to regular classes. With the three of us on the same page, the only thing we had left to do was look the part. Everything is ruined. Just when we had it all figured out, the worst possible scenario played out. My parents came to me with the news that due to my dad's new promotion, he will be transferred to a new facility in Orlando, Florida. Sounds great, right? Except for the fact that I would need to go with him, which meant I had to switch schools. How am I going to tell my friends that our plan has been shattered? Just the thought that our chances of becoming the coolest kids in high school have been crushed was discouraging and devastating for us. It was time for an emergency meeting with Sergio and Ruth. Later that day, we all met up at our favorite ice cream shop, where we'd always meet up to talk about something important. Before I broke the bad news, we all chose our signature ice cream sundae with extra fudge and sprinkles. While they both looked like they were enjoying their ice cream, I sat there with a blank stare replaying the situation in my head about how they were going to react. Apparently, the expression on my face was reflecting my thoughts, as Ruth slowly putting the bowl of ice cream down and asked, "Is something bothering you, Nathan?" The spoon in my hand simultaneously fell to the floor as the question caught me off guard. Ruth reiterated the question as I reestablished my thoughts and noticed the worry on both their faces. After a long pause that felt like a lifetime, I responded with a faint no. And Sergio, without a hesitation, replied, "I can see your nose growing, Pinocchio." I could not help but smirk at that remark. Somehow, Sergio always found a way to lighten up the tension when things got serious within our group. I had no choice but to self-disclose about my dad's promotion, and the effect it had on our plan. Once they heard that we were not going to attend the same school this upcoming year, their faces only expressed mixed feelings about where this could leave us. Whether it was intentional or not, I heard a sigh of relief from Ruth when I announced that our idea was done for. This was not much of a surprise to me, since I had a feeling that she wanted to keep her own identity and not fully go through with the pact. On the other hand, Sergio did not seem fazed at all. If anything, there was a look of determination in his eyes. Shortly after they processed the entire situation, Ruth said, "I guess it just wasn't meant to be." Sergio heckled and laughed at what Ruth had just said, and he rebutted, "You have to be kidding me. Nothing has changed. The plan is still alive." Both Ruth and I stared at Sergio as if he was crazy. There was nothing I could imagine that made Sergio's statement plausible. At this moment, all that I could think of was how much I wanted Sergio to be right, so I asked him to elaborate. "It's simple. We can make a game out of it," he responded. Ruth and I looked at each other and looked back at Sergio with a face full of doubt and question. "A game?" Sergio wore a sly smile as he began telling us about how, instead of being the coolest kids in the school, we could compete to see who is the coolest kid at their respective school. He kept on rambling about how we appear to others and how we would need to go through 3 phases by obtaining a completely different wardrobe, attitude, and hobbies. Despite it not being as simple as he first said it would be, we all agreed to go with our renewed agreement and begin our extreme transformation from zeros to heroes. Phase 1. Wardrobe. I'm on my way to meet up with Ruth and Sergio at the mall to pick out some clothes that go with the newest trend. As soon as I arrived at the mall, I see that Ruth and Sergio are already there waiting for me. I had never seen someone as excited as Sergio that could barely stand still, let alone one spot. As he paced around us, I could see that Ruth was nowhere near as ecstatic as Sergio. I wouldn't expect you to be like the Energizer Bunny we have over here, but I would imagine some form of enthusiasm from you, I pointed out to Ruth. I could see how she would avoid eye contact and just look down, and ultimately she said, "I guess I'm just nervous." As always, Sergio changes the direction of the conversation when it goes south, and simply says, "Come on guys, we have a lot of work to do." He is right. We are in the middle of a life-changing process and there's no time to dwell on any consequences. The first store we walked into was my personal favorite, Old Navy. They have such a good selection of some of the coolest superhero t-shirts, but the reason I loved Old Navy goes against what we, the group, is aiming for. It did not take long for us to decide to leave. Our next choice was the store well known for the bird logo printed on the left side of the shirt, American Eagle. Sergio was instantly hooked on all the styles and combinations the store had to offer, as he was grabbing all sorts of clothes from plaid button-downs to simple t-shirts, and finished up his image with some jeans. As we waited for him to try on what he picked out, I could see that something was still bothering Ruth. Her stare would drift into the distance, and she would not say a word. "This isn't obligated. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. Change isn't for everyone," I said to her. She barely reacted to my words and just stared at me. I did not know what else to do. This plan was meant for all of us from the beginning. Despite her look of discomfort, I did not want her to feel like I was pushing her out of the pact we made as friends. Luckily, before the situation got too awkward, out came Sergio sporting his brand new clothes. With a smile from ear to ear and his arms stretched out wide as he called for attention, he says, "Do I look cool or what?" Ruth stood there speechless, but I had never felt this plan had more upside than it did at this very moment. As I observed him with the brand new long sleeve red shirt with nothing but the simple logo on the left side pocket and the slim fit denim jeans, there was nothing I could say but cool. This was an insane upgrade compared to the punny shirts and the baggy shorts he was always wearing. With Sergio down, the next store we targeted was Sports Authority. I wanted my new look to be sporty. Growing up, I was never into sports, but because I was not very good at them. But I could see all the baseball and football players eat together, and they would always look so above everybody else. Thus, my new look is going to put me in the fast track to all the athletic kids. I chose a variety of tank tops from plain colors to some stylish designs. Then I went through the basketball section and picked out an assortment of baggy shorts that would definitely place me above nerd level. I went straight to the dressing room and came out with my favorite combination. "Whoa, you're going to be so cool," Sergio said with a sense of awe. Ruth was nowhere to be found. Sergio and I looked at each other, and the worrisome look on our faces spoke louder than any words we could mutter at this very moment. We ran out the store calling her name, and all we got in return was the startled faces of fellow shoppers. For weeks she did not answer any of our phone calls or text messages, so we went on with our plan without her. Phase 2. Attitudes. The next step is to reshape our attitudes completely, in order to not only look cool, but act like it too. The problem is that we don't know where to begin. Thus, Sergio and I agreed to meet up at his house to do some brainstorming. After a couple of hours of contemplating what we will be doing, Sergio grabbed the television remote and suggested that we take a break. While flipping through channels, we happened to find a network known as MTV. It was playing the top 25 music videos of today. The song that was playing at the instant we found the channel was Ayo. by Chris Brown featuring Tyga. I have no idea what the song was about, and neither did Sergio, but one thing was for sure, they looked really cool. As the video went on, we began to copy their dance moves and hand gestures. A few songs later, we found ourselves watching a song called Lay Me Down by Sam Smith. But Sergio and I used that song as an example of what not to do. Sam Smith looks like the type of person that would get picked on in high school, and we were trying to avoid that fate. Song 17 was Time of Our Lives by Pitbull featuring Neo. I cannot speak for Sergio, but by the end of that song I felt like Neo was a smooth criminal. By the end of the countdown, we felt like we had a good idea about the do's and don'ts of today's image of popularity. Just watching those videos made us feel tougher and hipper. We decided to go and try out our new swagger. As soon as we arrived at the park, we began to impose our new attitude by the way we walked and presented ourselves in general. By the reactions of the people at the park, we noticed we were doing something right. Everyone at the park was looking at us, and we must have looked tough because some parents even took their children away from the path we were walking through. I would have to say this attitude change was a success, claimed Sergio. That comment made me smile. Although I was feeling strange, I truly believed it as well. We took our confidence to the next level as we approached a group of people around our age and tried to socialize like we had never done before. Things hit off pretty quickly as we instantly got to know their names and some of the hobbies they had, which was perfect for the next phase of our master plan. Phase 3, Hobbies. Last but not least, the final stage of our transformation from nobodies to somebodies was to basically find new things to do. As of right now, we are two guys that like cartoons, video games, and the Discovery Channel. To become popular, we must get into sports, parties, and girls. We returned to the park to try our luck in some pickup basketball games, which was something we never liked to do before. However, it was almost like if it was meant to be. We were the tallest guys on the court and we had no problem scoring against our opponents at will. We were dominating the court, so much that they all left. One even went crying to his mother. I had never felt such a sensation of superiority as I did when I was playing basketball. With sports added to our arsenal of things to do, the following objective was to go to parties. Fortunately for us, the individuals we met at the park were throwing a party to celebrate the birthday of one of the girls in the group, and they actually invited us. We dressed up in our newest clothes, hoping to catch the attention of many ladies, and that way kill two birds with one stone. Once we got there, Sergio and I were less than impressed by the arrangement of the party, as it seemed a tad bit too childish for our fresh image. "What is this?" asked Sergio. As I looked around, I could understand where he was coming from. "I feel you, Serge. This is a step backwards for us. But let's make the most of it and try our chances with the girls." His face of disappointment immediately turned into a wide smile. "You are absolutely right, bro," he replied. Our first step was deciding on which girls were the most attractive. Use our brand new charm and sway them into our arms. We both agreed that the prettiest girl in the party was the birthday girl, but there was a dilemma. "She has a boyfriend," I cried to Sergio. I looked at him fearing that he would be crazy enough to go for it anyways. The expression on his face implied that he was up to no good. "You know I never back down from a challenge," said Sergio with a fearless look in his eye. I thought he was crazy because I would never attempt to go for a girl with a boyfriend, but he asked me to be his wingman. We started by approaching her from either side, as the idea was to sell Sergio as the coolest kid she had ever met. It did not get too far when her boyfriend noticed what we were up to. In an instant, a group of guys from the party grabbed us by the shoulders and threw us out the front door. I was devastated. I had never felt so ridiculed in my entire life. "I had her, man. We were just too cool for those nerds," claimed Sergio. After a while of putting thought into his words, "You know what, Sergio? I think you're right. I can't wait for our first year of high school." With only a week before the start of the new school year, both Sergio and I finally felt ready. The day we have both nervously been anticipating all summer has finally arrived. Sergio and I had called each other that morning to wish each other good luck on our first day in different schools. After we hung up, I walked towards the school entrance and slowly put my shades on. From the distance, I saw a guy staring at his phone screen and I thought he looked pretty rad. So I took mine out as well and pretended to be texting. "Be cool, Nathan, just be cool," I kept telling myself. The last thing I remember was a teacher running up to me and asking me if I was okay. I slipped and fell on an old and rotten banana peel. Everyone stared and waited for my reaction to then decide if it was a funny or tragic moment. "That's what happens when you pay attention to your phone and not enough attention to where you're going," I said, laughing, while standing up. They all joined in at my joke without noticing how embarrassed I really was. "Dude, you need to tell your girl to give you at least 5 minutes to get to school. It is really dangerous out there, you know," said Hector, a kid from my new school. I laughed and agreed with him. I thought my plan was over when I slipped with that banana peel, but it turned out to be a great starter. Hector offered to show me around the school campus and introduce me as his new pal. For the first time, someone else had made the decision to come up to me and include me in his group. Lunchtime came around and Hector pointed to a table across the cafeteria where only a handful of people were sitting. "You see that table over there? Well, that's the loser table. You know what that means, right? You cannot go near it," he said authoritatively. The losers table for a moment reminded me about the middle school daily struggles with Sergio and Ruth. Last year we were just like those nerds, and now we're completely changed people. Hello? Nathan, you heard me? "Do not make me regret including you in our group," he continued. I could not wait to get home and share my first day school experiences with Sergio. The plan was being a success. While walking into our last class for the day, I saw the cutest girl I had seen in the entire school that day. I was determined to smoothly go talk to her and ask for her number. How'd it go, you ask? Horrible! I was once again picking myself off the ground. If there was one thing I learned today was to never lean on an empty chair, because you will find yourself picking up your dignity from the floor. "I do not think you belong here, Nathan. Maybe you should sit in the front of the class with the rest of the losers," said Hector. I could not believe that the same person that had helped me stand up in the morning had kicked me when I was again at my lowest. From zeros to heroes? Yeah, I take that back. This plan was a disaster, and I was exhausted of trying to be someone I was not. How can someone expect people to be perfect when they're not perfect themselves? I just wish I could go back to how everything used to be. I miss my best friends. I miss being myself. The next morning I told my mom that I was not feeling good, and she agreed that it would be better if I stayed home to rest. "Maybe you're just tired from the long trip to our new home," she said before heading out to work. The truth was that I did not know how I was going to confront the kids at my new school. Should I go back and keep pretending and making a fool of myself, or should I go back and show the real me? I did not know whether to be Nathan, who was screaming to get out again and show the whole world his unique talents and abilities, or the cool Nathan that everyone wants to see. I had lost myself and my two best friends because of one silly idea that ended up being a big failure. I laid on my bed and looked straight up to the ceiling, thinking of how I wanted to apologize to Ruth, when suddenly my cell phone rang. "Ruth? Is that really you? I'm so sorry for everything," I kept telling her. Ruth humbly responded there was nothing to be sorry about. We all make mistakes that at times seems like the right thing to do, but later on turns out to be the worst of all decisions. The most important thing when making mistakes is to learn from them because you do not want to keep making them, she continued. Surprisingly, Ruth had become the most popular girl in her school by just being herself. She struggled at first, but her determination was stronger, and it led her to become the class president and the most artistic. Sergio's day was not easy either, you know. "That is why I'm calling you, Nathan," Ruth shared with me. "I was so concerned about what my life was going to be now that I completely forgot about him. I spoke with his mother before calling you, and she said that he was so humiliated that he does not want to go back to school. He wants to be homeschooled," said Ruth. They both were attending the same school, but because Ruth did not agree with the premise of our plan, she ignored him. Sergio had started his first day of school as planned, and everything seemed to be going perfect. Unfortunately, the majority of the kids attending their school had known Sergio as the nerd from middle school. "Rumors run faster than Usain Bolt did at the 2012 London Olympic Games," she joked. It was not until the bullies from middle school, Michael and Johnny, took Sergio's clothes and shoes from the boys' locker room that Ruth decided to stand up for him. It happened after the boys finished their baseball game that Sergio went to the shower, and "those malicious kids took his stuff," she shouted as she began to take deep breaths to calm herself down. Everyone was shocked to see her go up to Michael and Johnny to ask for Sergio's clothes back. "Really mature, guys. Both of you need to grow up already. We are not in middle school anymore," she proudly told me she had said. In her own unique kind of way, she was part of the cool kids, and they respected her like never before. Michael and Johnny ashamedly handed her the bag of clothes they had taken away from Sergio. The difference between Ruth and the other cool kids was that she used her popularity to help those people that are being bullied and are not able to stand up for themselves. It was amazing to see how she had molded into this humble person, who constantly looked out to help those who truly needed help around school. She saw beyond the need of a math or a reading tutor. She became the counselor and best friend of many students in need. No matter what, she stayed true, continually reminding herself that she was once there, and it was not fun at all. Sergio and I had forgotten that important fact of our middle school years. We had to learn to love ourselves for who we really are, the hard way. If we do not, then who will? Do not assume a character which does not belong to you, because no matter how good you decorate your mask, the charm will fall off eventually, and everyone will see right through it. The end.